If this scene is familiar to you, then you have been visited by the greatest scourge of D&D campaigns. Nope, it is not the Dark Lords. It is not even the dreaded ancient dragons. The greatest threat to your campaign is actually a ragtag bunch of unsteadily employed homeless travelers of questionable morals called Murderhobos. Hey everyone, CJ here. Let me welcome you to the world of Dungeons and Dragons, a game that gives you the freedom to choose any problem-solving methods to deal with your problems. But unfortunately, to some group of players, their method always involves murder. This is a perennial issue with D&D. I, like some of you out there, have had the displeasure of experiencing murderhoboism. As a dungeon master, I can say that there is no experience more devastating than having your meticulously crafted NPCs with richly detailed background and plot coherent purpose getting shanked with a cheap, rusty murder stick. But despite the massacre of my NPC, I'm honestly more concerned about those murder hobos ruining other players' experience. So, how did I fix this? Being the resourceful dungeon master that I am, I have opted to take a proactive approach to the issue. The mature way of dealing with this is to take the murder hobos to the side and talk to them. But then again, where is the fun in that? So I've decided to get even. And this is the story of that one time when I decided to give some murder hobos a taste of their own shank stick. First, I need to prepare a hook, a narrative hook. Just because it is a trap, I won't be skimping on the story. I have standards, you know. In the campaign we played a long time ago, due to homicidal shenanigans, the party ended up in Karatur. So, I took inspiration from a real-world legend and told them the adventure's background. Once upon a time, in the land beyond the misty mountains, there lived a talented blacksmith with his gentle wife and precocious child. The swords crafted out of his forge were as sturdy as Mount Gan, their curves as exquisite as River Ma, and their edge sharper than the winds that carved the straight cliff of Zia Canyons. Even generals, lords, and dukes fought for the privilege to commission his next masterpiece. Thus, his renown was elevated to mythical proportions. Even the emperor was soon enlightened of his talent. He decreed, "The Son of Heaven, dragon among men, shall not suffer the indignity of possessing inferior arms to his vassals. Have this subject craft his liege a sword unrivaled among all, one to cleave the grand adamantine bell of the imperial shrine. He has 1 moon to fulfill this decree." The blacksmith immediately realized that it was an impossible task. The emperor had commissioned his death sentence, as there is no other fate for those who fail to fulfill an imperial decree. However, one night, as if heavens itself had shed tears out of compassion, a star ore landed in his very own backyard. It was a material like no other, stronger than any steel even at hair's width. He was delivered salvation, but also a test. He tried everything to his craft's limit. Coal from Dragon Valley, bellows made out of salamander sack, but no matter what he did, the fire in his forge was unable to reach the heat level necessary to work this material. It was impossible, he said. There is just no way he could create fire comparable to the sky's furnace. But his wife knew that was a lie, because when he was but her father's apprentice, she had overheard a forbidden technique. To create a fire that can rival the brilliance of the sun, one needs the soul of the willing to stoke the furnace with life force. She knew that there was only one way to save her family and loved ones. So, before the father and son could see her eye gleaming with pained resolution, she made a swift movement with her fine dagger to release her soul from its mortal vessel. Tears, cries, and lament accompanied the animated fire that sprung into life from within the forge. Not wanting to let her sacrifice go to waste, the blacksmith worked with demonic fervor through the night and days to come. Without rest, without food, rage and anguish were his only sustenance. When the fire in his forge finally extinguished, Out of the star ore, he had crafted a sword worthy of the gods themselves, Dawn's Guard, and its other half, Silent Night. Delirious from exhaustion, he asked his son, "Isn't she beautiful? Your mother. Together, do we look like a couple?" When the Emperor received Dawn's Guard, he was elated. Never had he held a finer sword than this, peerless and without equal, a sword truly fit for an emperor. But it didn't take long until rumors of the other sword reached his ears.
"Treason! No man shall survive defrauding the Emperor!"
As Imperial guards marched down the blacksmith's shack, he packed his son's bag and told him to take his mother away with him and run as far away as possible. Forget everything that had happened and will happen, and do not ever return, he ordered. But a child was a child. When had one ever listened to their parents' order? 2 days later, he returned from his hiding place, and there in his home, he found his father's remains, summarily executed on sight for suspected treason. There was nothing left for this boy. The Emperor had taken everything: his home, his mother, and now his father. The only thing that he now possesses is a single driving force that will sustain him for years to come: vengeance. He found himself a master and trained with the best, made contact with other like-minded individuals and bid for his time. Unwavering in his path, 10 years later, he raised the flag of rebellion. And this is where our adventurers come in. Wanderers from Faerun contracted by a donor to save a young rebel leader on his last stand from the besieging Empire's army. The players had bought into the story. They found it suitably interesting, but what they really wanted was to use him as a puppet and take over the Empire for themselves once the rebellion becomes successful. If that didn't work, they will just kill him for his magic weapon. So, I've got a bite, and now it's time to reel them in. The players fought through the Empire's siege line. I designed them an interesting encounter. The army were made up of drafted peasants, unskilled, but they fight in deadly 5-man squad. It was possible to decommission a squad if they take out the squad leader, but if they got themselves surrounded, the consequence is dire. So while they were occupied by the mechanism of this encounter, they didn't think much when they saw a dirty, ragged figure strolling through the battlefield past them, taking out soldiers on his path as if they are insects. Once they have broken through the enemy line, the party rushed towards the rebel camp and found the young leader on his knees. Before him was the dirty vagrant they saw earlier. That man laughed and said, "Ha ha ha! Yes, you are right about one thing. It is going to be a lot of fun. Now, my reward." With a swing of his sword, he lopped off the young man's head and unceremoniously kicked it into his satchel. Right there and then, the Murderhobos were stunned. They think I won't kill my own NPCs? Well, joke's on them. I am out Murderhoboing the Murderhobos. And now they know how it feels to have their important story NPC killed. That was a George R.R. success. There is more to come, baby. Well, if they can't get their empire, then at least they will just get their fabled sword. But that's not happening. The vagrant took it. And that was the last straw for them. CJ, roll initiative. You see what happened there? The Murderhobos made me, the dungeon master, roll initiative. Okay, I will do that. And this time with pleasure. What they don't know is that this vagrant is a level 20 monk, and they are in for the beating of their lives. Hey, they asked for it. I have even foreshadowed how strong he was. So there is no more room for them to complain. The fight went the way as anyone would have expected. But where is the fun in just ending it all here? This is just the second part of my many-pronged hook. So to add insult to the injury, like a schoolyard bully with teachers on his side, he called out to the approaching Imperial soldiers. "Hey, over here! The rebels here!" Who soon surrounded the party. I have the head of the rebel leader here. That makes me the Imperial champion now, eh? Outnumbered and outmatched, the Murderhobos knew that they can't fight their way out of this situation. But puzzlingly, he suddenly claimed to be their friends. "Oh no. It's all a big misunderstanding, officer. They're my friends. Couldn't have done this all by myself. Isn't it right? Friends? Tell everyone how much you love me." Oh yes, not only that they are soundly defeated, now they have to lick his proverbial boots to survive. Oh, the salt mined out of that interaction was scrumptious. With the rebellion quashed, the party and the vagrant were moved to the capital to be presented to the emperor as the new champions of the empire. They had no idea what the vagrant was planning to do with them, but playing along was obviously the smart plan. As soon as they reached the imperial palace, he brazenly demanded to be entertained by imperial courtesans and want to see wine flow before him like the Loyang rapids. "Don't hide the pretty ones just because my friends are ugly," he said. This man was definitely not a character I designed to be endearing. Thus, they were roped into a night of revelry and debauchery with him, just one sleep away before their audience with the emperor. At least the Murderhobos had a great time while the other players did their own thing. "Go wild! Your cleric's lesser restoration can cure any disease anyway!" The vagrant kept goading them into more lurid acts. That night became the most scandalous night ever recorded in Inner Palace history. News traveled fast inside the palace, and by the next morning, every single attendant and guards were aware of their reputation. Their weapons had to be collected with thick, disposable gloves before their audience with the emperor. A powerful figure, even in his later years, he occupied the grand court with his overwhelming presence.
Are these sorry lots the champions who cut down the thorn at my side?
For the fear of assassination, the emperor had not given any direct audience for years. But their infamy captured his curiosity. Even his best men had failed to capture the notorious rebel leader for years. How in the world could this ragtag bunch of lowly mercenaries do the impossible, he thought. Mr. Murderhobo took offense, and it got me excited. Wow, is he going to walk down the plank on his own accord?
Very well then. Prove your mettle, champion.
The emperor challenged him to a friendly sparring match. They both held out pretty well, but by now, the Murderhobo had started to learn his lesson, knowing that if he had hurt the emperor, his head would soon accompany the young rebel leaders. So he didn't do anything too crazy after winning. I was actually proud of that. Satisfied by the workout, the emperor moved on to the main event on his agenda. He had ordered his men to prepare an enormous cauldron filled with boiling oil, and he will plunge the decapitated head of his former enemy into it as an act of eternal desecration. Hey, special request here. Can I do it instead? The kid wounded my knee once, so can I do it? For revenge? The vagrant pleaded. While disgusted by the lack of protocol, the emperor gracefully granted him the honor. Yeah! He grabbed the head and dunked it into the cauldron. He danced as the head fried in the rolling oil. Until suddenly, he turned pale. The head! It is saying something! The emperor! What about the emperor? Surprised by this sudden turn of events, the emperor demanded an explanation. It must be possessed! Wait. I know what to do! I can exorcise evil spirits, and it's free and easy. I just have to pee in the mouth of that decapitated head. Disgusted by this shameful display, everyone in court turned away and closed their eyes. So did the emperor, who fell for the oldest trick in the book, to kill with a borrowed knife. But in this case, it is a sword. With a single flowing action, Silent Night was freed from her scabbard and whistled in the air, meeting no resistance as it flies through the neck of the tyrant. Loosened from the body, the emperor's head tumbled, but before it could reach the ground, a kick sent it flying into the cauldron of oil. Alerted by the suspicious splash, court attendants opened their eyes and saw the horror of the emperor's headless body next to the maniacal, laughing vagrant. Assassins! Somebody cried out, and things go south. Yeah, this is how it feels when the Murderhobo drags you into an unnecessary fight against overwhelming odds. And with this, my cycle of payback is complete. Luckily for the Murderhobos, the other players had the sensibility to secure an escape route by buying favor from a courtesan. But before they could sneak out, they get to experience the vagrant's last bravado. Now wounded by the onslaught of elite palace guards and surrounded from all sides, the vagrant no longer had any means of escape. He pointed to the cauldron and asked, "Can you tell which one of these burned heads is your emperor's?" "Well, let me give you a hint. It is not this one!" With a stroke of the blade, he decapitated himself and his head fell into the very same cauldron. Now, 3 lumps of indistinguishable flesh rolled in the boiling oil as the guards watched helplessly in horror. The players managed to escape. I wasn't about to let innocent party members become collateral damage in the execution of this plan. I knew they were going to talk to some of the NPCs, so they did the right thing by securing an escape route. The fact that they saved the Murderhobos wasn't part of my plan, but all's well that ends well. The best thing is that the Murderhobos learned their lessons and knew how it felt to be led around by the consequence of a Murderhobo's shenanigans. After that episode, they have started listening to their party members' opinion and they have hardly ever caused me any trouble since. As for the Empire, they were unable to distinguish which head belonged to the Emperor. But since the heir to the throne turned out to be an enlightened ruler, they ended up entombing all 3 heads together and called it the Tomb of the 3 Monarchs. They were honored by their exemplar virtues: birthright, filial piety, and loyalty. It would be some time until the reformed Murderhobos come across this tomb, but that's a story for another time. Okay, first of all, let me thank all my patrons on Patreon for supporting this channel. I certainly couldn't do it without their help. And for the rest of you, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe. If you're new here and want to learn how to play D&D, check out the How to Play D&D playlist. CJ, over and out.